Okay, Module 5. This week's session, I'm here on the Canvas website. This week's session, what we'd like you to do is go down to Module 5, and you notice Module 5 this week we're doing Business Analytics. What we actually will be doing is finalising your knowledge on IPO charts, so continuation from last week, and the final part of the Excel Excel that you need to know, which puts all of the Excel that you've learnt so far, block 1, 2 and 3, into practice, ready for you guys to be able to do your business report. So in other words, what we're going to be doing is testing you or showing you how to complete the spreadsheet with knowledge of VLOOKUP, some ifs, etc., and then use the good old pivot tables to answer questions, which you should do for your business report. So, all right, I'm going into Module 5, and in Module 5, obviously, we're going into the workshop material here. And now what we'd like you to do is download all of these files. So basically download the IPO chart, the instruction file for the Excel, and put all these into a directory ready to do the workshop. Right? Okay, I'll see you guys in a few minutes because I'm just going to put these into a folder where I can open it and demo them for you. Okay, see you again in a second. Okay, let's start on the Excel portion of today's exercise. In the workshop, if you open the Excel Part 4 PDF, which is the instruction file for the workshop, you'll notice I'm not going to go right through this PDF for you. You can do that in your own time, but there are two main sections that we'll be covering in this workshop. The first one is to actually see or test your previous knowledge of how to use VLOOKUPs and so forth, how to actually complete a spreadsheet. And the last one, which is probably the most important, is to answer the questions. But you can't answer the questions unless you've filled in the spreadsheet correctly. So I'm going to split this video into two. The first part will be how do we complete this spreadsheet, and the other point is the second part will be how to answer the question, and mainly we'll be using the pivot table. Right, so I'm going to be using this file here, Marita Loans Part 4, number 1. I'm not going to open the second one. Won't be opening the second one. So get ready, open the file. Pause here, open the file, get ready to begin. First part will be we'll clean up the spreadsheet. Okay, see you guys in a second. Welcome back. Now I've opened the spreadsheet, as you can see here, Marita Loans Part 4, number 1, and this is the raw spreadsheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes just to make our life a lot easier. If you can see all the columns and so forth that you have to fill in afterwards to complete the spreadsheet, so that we can do some analysis. But we have the data, which is quarterly data there, quarter 3. If I go to reference sheet, it's basically the same as what we had previously, but we've got some added information here about client gifts, so awarding gifts. And we have our tables of data, which we use as reference data within the spreadsheet. So in industry, you'll actually see the sheets. There'll be many sheets available to you, right? But if I click on this guy, let's begin and do some cleanups, right? First off, I don't want grey tabs. I'm just going to do a really quick one. Click on here, go left, right click, pick a colour, and I'll just pick a green. That'll do, because that's what they were using before as a standard. So, and my reference sheets, any data, usually what I do is any data which are provided, which is used within the spreadsheet, I usually put in red tabs, which means if you like a warning to say if you change any of these parameters, it's going to affect the whole spreadsheet. I usually use like a blue sort of color for working, like spreadsheets which have a lot of functions in them and so forth, so working sheets. And then I may have some like green or whatever, or let's say orange, which is like, in this case we've used green just to show that it's kind of got a summary summary. It's kind of like a mixture of the two. And usually what I'll do too is, which you might find useful, is the areas which I allow people to modify, I would set that as a background very light grey colour, so you could see, okay, grey colour, which means I can modify this directly in the boxes, right? So I can input, copy, paste data in here, so it lets people know that the light grey areas are for editing, right? So if you're in a business, you let people know, say, oh, this grey thing is what you can touch, but any of the white ones might have a formula or something, please don't touch, right? So I'm going to undo that, but that's just a bit of advice if you ever use spreadsheets, which you will when you go out in the industry. So let's clean this up. First off, you can see, like in the first session, the header is, I don't like that. You actually have that header static on the top. Click in A2 and say anything above A2, I want that to remain and not move. So I'll go to View, and I'll say Freeze Pane, click Freeze Pane. Now you can see whenever I'm looking at the data, I can always see the header, right, which is very important in business, right? The other thing you might find in Note 2 is this is a very small spreadsheet. It's only got 37 rows, but when you go out to work in industry, you'll actually see that these rows will go into the thousands, and you don't want to be going up and down, going to row 1,000. You want a total for a particular client, like settle amounts. The last thing you want to do is put in here saying, okay, what I want is the total of this column, right? And then if someone in management or whatever needs to see the totals, they'd have to scroll all the way down to like row 2000 just to see this value, right? So a good practice within spreadsheets is to, I'll go back here to the main thing, is to actually go right up to the very top, do insert, and if you want to, just put your whole sum, right, all the way down here, right? You can go even past wherever you like, right? And you would actually see that you've got the totals at the top, and they're always there, right? So it's a good idea to put your summary at the top here, so you've always got access to it, right? Okay. So there's just a helpful hint. Rather than scrolling 14,000 pages, you always see your totals or your summaries up the top here whenever needed. Anyway, I'll undo that because it's not part of the workshop. It's just something for you guys to use when you get out in the workforce, make your millions. All right, now, next bit. Do you remember the mention was this area here in the blue, obviously is, or these columns, provided for people to input data, right? So these should be sort of like light grey, saying yes, you can copy or paste data in it. Right? The green columns are columns where you're basically doing functionality. You're putting formulas in here, right? And you notice here up front percentage will be used within these formulas, right? So we don't want to see hard-coded values like this. So the first point of call would be to actually create your own. I'm going to copy this. Where's my copy here? And I'm going to go to the reference sheet. I'm going to right across here. I'm going to tab, paste here, right? And I'm going to say in my, get rid of this error. I don't know why it's still doing it. Let's go escape. Right here, I would actually say 95%. Okay, 95%. I can go back to my sheet here, and now to do it correctly, what we really want to do is we want to point, right, equals as the reference value, right? And because we don't want to have relative where it moves down, shifts down, I would here do F4 to surround it with $, so it locks it in place. Now I can literally double click, and now it's very effective for me to say, okay, our upfront percentage for today is 93%. Right? If it's 93, it'll update all of my spreadsheet. I don't have to go and modify all of these guys to the new value. So just a word of caution is that you should have any of your formulas and so forth, you should start referencing data and don't type in 95% and 93%. Actually reference a cell, which makes it more flexible. Right? Let me undo that from 90. And no, you guys forgot to tell me. I'm going to highlight here. I'm going to copy the format. Right, there we go. Now, if I go back to my sheet, I can actually see it's 95% back to what we should have. Right. All right. Let's pause there for a second. So let's continue with the cleanup. And the thing you should see is that we will be using commission rates and so forth up here on the formulas. If we look at our reference sheet, we've got a lot of tables here. Right? So instead of us trying to remember, oh, what's A2 to B5 and all that sort of rubbish, give it a name. Right? So here we can actually say, I've highlighted my data area and I can say consultant rates, let's say, consultant rates. Enter. Here I can actually say, oh, well, I'll be using this table for something which is probably loan type commissions, right? Loan type, I'll say rates again. Oh, sorry, doing the wrong thing. Click in the name box, right? Loan type rates. Okay, and I know loan type rates has got two columns as well. Here I can say referral commission or rates. I'll click in here, referral rates. So I can use all of these range names within my formulas, right? And I know here I've got bank rates. Okay, so I can highlight that. Bank rates. Right. And I know here I've got regions. I could use that for my regions. I could use that for my drop down list boxes, which we did earlier. Client type, so I can actually create a drop down list box for client type. You notice it's going to make my life a lot easier later doing formulas, right? So here I've got this area saying gift, so I'm just going to call it award gift. Award gifts. And here I can actually say upfront. Upfront percentage. Notice the labels do not have any spaces in them, right? So there. Oh, I misspelt it. So it's actually incorrect. So let's go fix that up. I can go to formula. Oh, so formulas name managers on the Macs. Remember, it's define name, right? So I can go back here and go upfront percentage. If I edit that, I can go upfront percentage. Update it. Close. So now I'm ready to use all of these formulas, all of these areas in my calculations. One that was missing here, remember, was the commission. So staff bonus. And I'm pretty sure, remember, staff bonus is $150. So let's format that to what we had over here. Oh, there is no format here. Let's just do a quick copy of this format. And I'll go there. That's it. And this guy, I want that to be shown as accounted $150. And I can click on that cell rather than saying V2 in the reference sheet. I can actually say here staff bonus. So now that I've got all my range names in place, I can start building up this spreadsheet here using the range names. I'll be doing the highlighting and so forth, so you'll see that the Excel spreadsheet will actually pick up those areas, and then you don't have to worry about the F4 putting the dollars in to make it absolute. So we'll do that just now. So now that we've cleaned up our spreadsheet, we're ready to fill in the rest of these columns as required by the workshop. So we need to complete these in so we can eventually do data analysis on our data collected, right? So we can have a look here. We're going to do bank commissions. Just to let you know, if we have a look at the drop down list box here on the name box, all the range names that we're starting to build up are quite extensive, so we can use these within our formulas rather than the absolute referencing C2 to C4 and all that sort of rubbish, right? So excuse me. So what I'll do is you'll see all this in the complete version of the video, but you can go to the individual components. So each one of these columns will be a video on its own within the playlist for this module, right? So let's begin. We'll go with the first exercise. This will also be in the complete and in its individual, so if you need to reference, remember you can go back and see the videos. Now, bank commission rates, right? How do we calculate that? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the loan or the loan provider, the lenders, and we'll be looking at those lenders to actually get what rates they are working off, and that's located in the reference sheet, right? So if I go across here, and you can see here I've got bank and commission, so here are the lenders and their commission rates. So if I highlight that area, you can see that the range name is already assigned to you, say bank rates. So we can use bank rates within our formula and look for, if you're not familiar with the VLOOKUP, remember, because that's what we'll be using. The VLOOKUP first column is the lookup value. So we'll be looking for a particular lender in this column, and we want column 2 back to get the commission rates for that bank, right? So the other additive information was, remember the lookup value here has got text in it, and because it's text, the very last parameter, the range lookup, will automatically be false, right? Because we want identical match. Right, so let's have a look. We'll go over here. I'll click in there, and I'll use the function insert function method again, just so until you get used to it, because eventually you'll just type the formulas into the formula bar directly, right? So I'll double click on lookup. So what is my lookup value? Excuse me. So I know whatever lookup value I've got must be on the same row as the formula. So I know it's the lender, so I'll click on lender, and we want this to increment as we go down with the fill function afterwards. When we fill the VLOOKUP in, we want it to increment in, so we don't want absolute, we want relative, which it is. The table table array, if you can't remember what we've actually assigned as a range name, so I could actually type in here, say bank rates, right? And you notice it's already found it, but if you can't remember the name, you can go directly and highlight the data, right? So I can highlight this table here, and if you didn't assign a range name, remember you have to absolute it, so $, $, lock it in. Now we know the range here, or the table, has got 2 columns in it, and remember, if our lookup value is in the first column, we want to return the second column. So column index is the return column, so 2. And I said previously, because we had text for the lookup, so the text here in Cape Business Loans, there's got text in it. This is automatically false for an exact match, right? So I'll type in false. And you notice the formula is already working. If you have any NAs in here, something's wrong, stop, go back, right? So little steps, don't try to do the whole lot, but this is your secondary test, and you notice it's already found the commission rate. So I can go OK, and there is the commission rate. Right? And remember, it's only a rate that we're after at this stage. So I'm happy with that because it's all locked, right? So absolute, and I can double click, and there are my commission rates. And what I want to do is I want to show it as a percentage. So I go in here, and it just looks like ones, and the reason is because we have to shift the decimal across, so you shift either way, this way, to get the full amount. Okay, alright, I hope that helped. Let's go to the next column in the next video, and if you're not, we'll just pause and try it again. Remember, you've got to try these exercises on your own. Don't just follow blindly and think it's really easy. You must remember how to do it. If you do it 3 times on your own and then do the fill, you'll remember it for the exam and for the tests. Okay. So now that we've cleaned up our spreadsheet, we're ready to fill in the rest of these columns as required by the workshop. So we need to complete these in so we can eventually do data analysis on our data collected, right? So we can have a look here. We're going to do bank commissions. Just to let you know, if we have a look at the drop down list box here on the name box, all the range names that we're starting to build up are quite extensive, so we can use these within our formulas rather than the absolute referencing C2 to C4 and all that sort of rubbish, right? So excuse me. So what I'll do is you'll see all this in the complete version like of the video, but you can go to the individual components. So each one of these columns will be a video on its own within the playlist for this module, right? So let's begin. We'll go with the first exercise. This will also be in the complete and in its individual, so if you need to reference, remember you can go back and see the videos. Now, bank commission rates, right? How do we calculate that? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the loan or the loan provider, the lenders, and we'll be looking at those lenders to actually get what rates they are working off, and that's located in the reference sheet, right? So if I go across here, and you can see here I've got bank and commission, so here are the lenders and their commission rates. So if I highlight that area, you can see that the range name is already assigned to you, say bank rates. So we can use bank rates within our formula and look for, if you're not familiar with the VLOOKUP, remember, because that's what we'll be using. The VLOOKUP first column is the lookup value. So we'll be looking for a particular lender in this column, and we want column 2 back to get the commission rates for that bank, right? So the other additive information was, remember the lookup value here has got text in it, and because it's text, the very last parameter, the range lookup, will automatically be false, right? Because we want identical match. Right, so let's have a look. We'll go over here. I'll click in there, and I'll use the function insert function method again, just so until you get used to it, because eventually you'll just type the formulas into the formula bar directly, right? So I'll double click on lookup. So what is my lookup value? Excuse me. So I know whatever lookup value I've got must be on the same row as the formula. So I know it's the lender, so I'll click on lender, and we want this to increment as we go down with the fill function afterwards. When we fill the VLOOKUP in, we want it to increment in, so we don't want absolute, we want relative, which it is. The table array, if you can't remember what we've actually assigned as a range name, so I could actually type in here, say bank rates, right? And you notice it's already found it, but if you can't remember the name, you can go directly and highlight the data, right? So I can highlight this table here, and if you didn't assign a range name, remember you have to absolute it, so $, lock it in. Now we know the range here, or the table, has got 2 columns in it, and remember, if our lookup value is in the first column, we want to return the second column. So column index is the return column, so 2. And I said previously, because we had text for the lookup, so the text here in Cape Business Loans, there's got text in it. This is automatically false for an exact match, right? So I'll type in false. And you notice the formula is already working. If you have any NAs in here, something's wrong, stop, go back, right? So little steps, don't try to do the whole lot, but this is your secondary test, and you notice it's already found the commission rate. So I can go OK, and there is the commission rate. And remember, it's only a rate that we're after at this stage. So I'm happy with that because it's all locked, right? So absolute, and I can double click, and there are my commission rates. And what I want to do is I want to show it as a percentage. So I go in here, and oh, it just looks like ones, and the reason is because we have to shift the decimal across. So you shift either way, this way, to get the full amount. Okay, all right. I hope that helped. Let's go to the next column. So let's continue. We've just calculated the bank, or not calculated, but we've looked up the bank commission rate. But to get the bank commission, it'll just imply a simple formula where we get the settlement amount and multiply it by the commission rate. So it's a very simple formula. I double click in here and say equals, and I know it's K2 multiplied by, so shift 8, by the percentage rate, and that gives me the actual bank commission, right? And I'm happy with that because the formula has to be relative, no locked values. I can just double click in and fill. Right? All right. Okay, now that we've calculated our commission rates from the bank, bank's perspective, now we can start looking at trying to calculate the total sales revenue. Now to do that, we need first step to go to net amount, and net amount implies that what we're looking at is GST inclusive, a percentage, upfront percentage of the bank commission. Right? So in here, is 02, I can actually go the bank commission rates multiplied by the upfront percentage. Right? So I get a net net amount, which is GST inclusive, calculated. If I do a fill, you notice the fill will now give me all the loan net amounts, but what we want to do is actually see what is the GST component within that that amount. Right? And hopefully you realise you divide that by 11 to get the GST component. It's divided by 1.1 to get the whole component. Right? So if I do equals to divided by, let's just do 1.1 to get the whole amount, right? Main part. So if I said this is exclusive, so GST inclusive, but that would be the amount excluding GST. But what we're after is the GST component, so we have to divide by 11. Right? 11, which gives me the GST component of this net amount. If you don't understand all that, I can't go through an explanation here. Look it up on Google and see whether you have any questions after that. If you still do, email. Right? So the GST component is just basically net amount divided by 11. So if I double click here now, I've got the full amount. And our sales revenue is just a simple here equals O minus 2 minus PT. Okay. And you notice all of these are not absolute, they're all relative to allow us to do the fills. Okay, now we'll calculate sales revenue, and the last part will be to calculate the sales bonus, and I'll do that in just a second. Let me pause here. Is to calculate the standard bonus. Now, standard bonus is a bit of a confusing heading, but what we're really looking for is we want to see how much of the commission from this total revenue is attributed to the loan type. Right? Loan type. Just to explain a little bit further, we've got loan types. If I remember correctly, we go back here, and we know for loan type, for a particular loan type, we have a commission here. Right? And notice we've already given range names, so we don't have to worry about D2, E5 and $. We just use loan type rates. Right? So I can actually do a right click on there, just copy it, Alright, and so I'm going to be using this area with a VLOOKUP again. So for a particular loan type, I'm going to return back column 2 in this area in the table as the commission to the salesperson. So let's go back here. So I'm going to be using B2 to look up in the table, and I'll be returning column 2 to get the commission rate. So here we go. I'm just going to go VLOOKUP. Right? I'll use this VLOOKUP here, double click. My lookup value was B2, was the loan type. So we go across to loan type. Remember, it has to be, the lookup value has to be on the same row as my function. Right? So there's my function in row 2, and so B2. So this time we're going to be looking for commercial, and realise that, see, it's got letters in it. So C0 or COM letters, which means the last parameter will be false for an exact match. Right? Alright, so where was the area that we're going to be looking for? And I know it's loan type rates. If you don't know or can't remember the range name, remember you can always go back to here. Where was it? Loan type, and highlight your area. It'll pick the name that you assigned to it. If you haven't assigned a name, it'll come back with D2E5, which means you have to do $D, $2, $E, to make it absolute and lock it, right? Okay. Now, we know that we, as a from this table, we need to get the commission rate, which means it's column 2 in this table. So click in here, say column 2. And remember I said letters means automatically false, so an exact match. And you notice secondary test, it's all worked fine. I don't have any NAs here as errors. So there is the commission rate. Right? But we're not finished here. What we really need is that is a commission rate of the sales revenue. So to finish the formula, we have to append here at the top in the formula bar, multiplied by sales revenue. Right? And say enter. Right? Now I have my standard bonus applicable. I'm happy with this. So I double click down, and there are my bonus rates which are applicable to this calculation. Okay, now that we've calculated all our formulas and so forth, we are ready to answer the questions in the next section. So we'll be creating a pivot table to answer the questions. Okay. Alright, now that we've got the Excel spreadsheet configured, ready to answer questions, the second part of the tute was for the decision support system, which means that we'll be using a pivot table, and the pivot table we'll use to answer these questions for you. I'm not going to write them into here because it's a PDF for it. They didn't give me a Word version, but I'll attempt to answer all of these in the next video. Right? Okay, let's create a pivot table. Now you should remember from the previous workshop, I could, if this was a clean spreadsheet and there's no remnant data in some of these blank areas, and the rows, right? So these rows as well, if they're blank, they don't have any rubbish in them from previous editing, I could just click in A1 and then do a Control-Shift-End, which will highlight all the data for me. Right? But what I'll do is I can also do select all data in the sheet, right? Which will just bring in some blanks, but it will be ignored. But we will just go A1, highlight, drag across. There we go to the data and say insert pivot table. Insert pivot table. Okay. And we know that the area here has been highlighted correctly. We can see the absolute referencing for the region, and it's in the new sheet, so it's okay. Now here is my pivot table. So the pivot table here will change on my selection of the fields that I want to look into in that big table. Right? So I'm just going to change this name here. Pivot table. Oh, I did it again. No, I didn't. It's okay. Good. All right. And I know it's a calculation thing, so I'm just going to change that to my good old calculation tab. So they're blue. Sometimes use a bit darker. Get white writing. Okay, so this would be like a calculation spreadsheet, worksheet. So let's have a look at the very first question. It says, who was the best performing consultant? Right? So let's have a look at consultants. I can pick here, or I can pick and drag into my rows, and you can see that my consultants have been listed. And let's see total sales revenue. Let's just do it off total sales revenue. So I'll click in here, and you notice in the value values area, it'll put my field that I selected in for the numbers, basically in the values. On the Mac machines, remember, be careful of the sum, right? If it's not showing sum, you have to go down. Unfortunately, this is off the screen. You click on the little down arrow and then pick value field settings. Value field settings will show you the settings for that values parameter, and on the Macs, sometimes by default it comes out as count, but we don't want count at this stage. We just want sum. So it's okay. It's in the right format here. Now what I'll do is you click in this area here, and basically do a right click, sort, and I want largest to smallest. If you don't want to use the right click, you can go to data, sort, and do the same thing, largest to smallest. Okay. Now I want to see dollars, just for instance. I can go back to the home, so I just highlighted the whole column, and I just want to see dollars. Right? So there we go. If you change this formatting, remember next time if I do a count, I want to see how many loans they've sold and all that sort of stuff. You have to change this formatting appropriately. So just in this case, let's just undo that. I'm just going to go Control Z, and I can see that Rory is the best consultant, because we got 52, basically nearly 51,000 from that consultant. Right? Okay, what is the bonus payment due to each consultant? Right? Let's pause here. Now, instead of using sales revenue, what I would like to say is, because we've said, oh, what does each consultant get as a payment, I will uncheck sales and I'll check the standard bonus. So here, if I want to see the dollar values again, you can see the list of people here. Kit would have 2,500, Pedro 1,495, and so forth. Right. So that's the answer to the second part of the questioning that we're looking at. Okay, the next question is, what is the total sale revenue for the quarter? Right? And as soon as we say quarter, it implies that our table here must have some date formatting. And you notice the question doesn't involve consultants either, or the bonuses. So I can remove the consultants. I can get rid of the sum, some of the sales bonus. So I would look for sales revenue, and I would pick, because we need a date, I would pick settlement date as my as my criteria for the rows. So I pull out months, I don't really need that. So settlement date, which enables me then to group things for quarter, right? And what we want to do is look at sales revenue, right? So sales revenue, remember again, make sure it's a sum, right? So here we have all the sales grouped by. So what we need to do is right click on the date area, group by, and we can remove the dates and months, and we can pick quarters. So we're going to say OK, and so for the quarter, this is how much we made. So the answer to total sales revenue for the quarter is 160,319.21 cents. All right, next question asks us, what region accounted for the most and least sales revenue? So we can leave sales revenue there. We can remove the date now, but we need region. So I put region into the rows. You can either click on it here or just drag it down to rows. Right? Now, to see the most to least, remember, right click, sort, largest to smallest, and we can see Southeastern was the most with 89,149, and Western was 6,320. Right. You notice the power of pivot tables. It's extremely easy and quick to flick through the data. What was the question says, what was the sales revenue in each case? Well, in each case, you can see it there. We've already calculated it, so we've answered that one. Now, what percentage of all sales were for home loan or commercial, personal, and so forth? So the home loan type. So I'm going to get rid of region, and I'm going to say home loan type. So for the home loan type here, we have the totals. I'll just sort these guys again, largest to smallest. But now what we can actually do is, instead of seeing the sales revenue as a sum of total, if I go to the option here, I can actually go back down to value field settings and pick show values as, and instead of no calculation, I can click on here and say percentage of grand total. If I do OK, now I've actually got percentages listed. So home loans was actually 80.57% of all of our sales. Okay, hope you get that. You can also do a very quick right click and pick off the menus instead of using the right click down, with the drop down arrow. So I can reset that back to my old calculation and say no calculation. Now the next question says, how many of the loans were fulfilled by each lender? So we don't need loan type, we need the lender, which is lender, right? So now I have lender, and it says how many of the loans were fulfilled by the lenders. So in other words, we don't want sum of revenue, we actually want to just count, right? So down here, let's do value field settings, and now we just collect the count instead of a sum. And let's do a right click in this column and sort largest to smallest. So we see AMO gave us 7, Liberty 6, and so forth, all the way down the list. Right? Okay. Right. Okay, the last part of the tutorial is that now we've seen how to manipulate pivot tables and have a better look into the data, is now to actually have some business decisions behind it, and the decisions will be behind comparing things. So it's a good idea. Well, personally I do it, but other people might not. But to create several pivot tables on the one sheet, so you can manipulate the different pivot tables and actually visibly see the difference on the one sheet rather than flicking through sheets. So let's just add another. I've still got the data highlighted, so I'll go insert pivot table, and this time the region is there, but I'm actually going to say put it into an existing sheet, and I'll go back to my pivot table sheet, and I'm going to insert the next pivot table right there, so it'll appear in the background here, the second one, second pivot table. So I'll go OK. Now the questions which were put forward in the sheet was, what conclusions can you make about the lenders? Are all lenders being used? Is there a connection between their popularity and the commission they pay? Right. So let's in the second pivot table, let's just put lenders in. Okay. And with the lenders, popularity implies how many they've sold. Which we've done on this side here, but I'll change that so we can see the revenue, sales revenue against how much they've sold. So in here, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'll pick sales revenue down here, and I will do a count this time. I'm not going to use the drop down list box. I'm just going to say show value summaries as count, this guy here, I'm going to show summaries as sum, so I can see after sorting these guys, so I'll go right click, sort largest to smallest, right click, sort largest to smallest, and I can immediately see that Liberty for a sales revenue of 40,000 was implied six loans. Okay, now let's do something a bit different. Because these two pivot tables are showing me a complete combined set of data, what I'd like to do is actually filter this data on the loan types. So what I'll do is I'll grab loan type and I'll filter down here, and I'll click on this guy, filter down here, and let's just have a look at the different types of loans. Okay, so this is for all loans, and all loans you can see that Liberty's the best performer on sales revenue for only 6 loans, right? And right down the bottom we can see a Kia Motor is the least performing, and they've got 4 loans, right? So immediately you can already see that there's some kind of an issue with motor vehicle loans. So excuse me, let's just pick motor vehicle, and let's pick motor vehicle here. And you notice motor vehicle, all the other lenders have dropped out, so we only have one lender who is a vehicle loan lender and give us 4. So that could be a business decision that we could sort of like look at further down the track, something to keep in mind. So let's go to home loans. With home loans, these are already sorted, but just let's just put largest to smallest, largest to smallest. Right. And we can see with home loans, Liberty 40,000 for 6 loans, right? And AMO is 20,000 for 5 loans. So immediately there's a discrepancy there as well, right? So is there something to do with commission rates? Why this guy has been pushed more, maybe, for the amount of money that we've actually got back from him. It's almost double the amount of sales revenue for only one difference in home in loans, which seems very attractive if you think, because the amount there is much better than it's only 5 for nearly half the amount. So AMO for half the amount. So let's do this. I could add another, and I will. I'll add another chart in here. So I'll go insert table. Where do I want to insert it? And I'll say down here somewhere. Let's just pick here. Right, and here I'll do the same thing. Let's just do lenders, and let's have a look. We'll do sales revenue. We won't do sales revenue. Oh, by the way, we filter by loan, but we'll do by standard bonuses. Right? Now let's filter this one and sort it. We'll filter for home loan. Okay, and we see that the bonus is paid out for this amount, $2,000 for 6 loans. So that can be an issue that we would highlight within our business report. The other thing that we look at is the least performing, which is the BOQ and NAB for 1. Obviously very low amounts. Just a quick calc, if you increase that to 10, it's only 1,000, so it's still less performing than these guys up the top end, right? Especially Liberty, right? So is there a factor? Your call. You have to do a little bit more analysis. Obviously for your business report you would actually create a chart for each one of these and then compare the charts. And remember, easy way of doing charts is just click on the number field, so insert chart, and I'm just going to do a column here just so you see it. Okay, and obviously you would have 3 charts which are continually changing as you change the data, which is a bit easier to see in a chart than it is with numbers, right? Okay. The second question, you understand here what I'm trying to do is explain to you how to analyse and compare, right? So you can put pivot table after pivot table between each other or in separate sheets, but if they're in separate sheets, they're a bit more difficult to see. If you've got a big screen, it's even better. You can put pivot table under pivot table under pivot table and have all your charts on the right hand side, and then your field selection on the far right, right? So it makes it a bit easier to see how to compare and so forth. You know, it makes some more decisions about. But first decision would be the car loans. I'm not sure, are we really set up for car loans, because all of these guys just drop out. Not really a great performer either. Probably better put our staff on the home loan side rather than car loans. But on the home loan, it seems to be quite a good performer. Let's just have a really quick look at commercial. Commercial loans. If we look at commercial, let's just sort these guys again. No need to sort, they're all one. Sort this guy, largest, smallest. Then we can see commercial loans. Cape Business Loan seems to be the top performer here, and it's just for one loan, so it's quite a good return there, right? Okay. Right, and we can see down here, this is the sort of chart that you would copy and paste, so you would just click in here, copy, and then paste it within your Word document after you've formatted all the numbering and so forth, right? Just to make it a bit pretty, and change the title, not just total, just give it a proper percentage. You double click in here and you update the title of the page. Now the next question within the exercise was, what other factors may impact the sales analysis of Marita loan, right? What other factors? And the factors are really the context, because remember earlier we said each one of these cells is actually data, right? So meaningless rubbish until you give it context, and the context is the heading of each column, right? So if I said to you, if I just walked in the door and said home loan, motor vehicle, you would have no idea what I'm talking about until I give you context, which means information. So each one of these columns is information. The context would be loan type, home loan. So loan type, motor vehicle. It actually means something. And so I'm talking about loan types. So for information to analyse information for your business report, you would look at these headings. Can I analyse these particular headings further using the data which we calculated and so forth over here, right? So we could analyse referred by. We could say what type of client, client type. We already did lender. We did the region. We could actually say client analysis as well. Who is our best client? Let's have a quick look. Best client. If I click in here, and I can leave home loan, but I'll take client and take lender out. I can see here from sort largest to biggest, and these guys, I can actually see our best client was this guy, Atherton. Why do they always make the name so difficult, Prince, right? Okay, so you can see how quickly we can analyse other factors within this data. You could even go down to further analysis by saying, oh, how did we do in October? How did we do in November? Right? And the other analysis you could even go further on is how long did it actually take from approval to settlement? So there's up to an amount of data or factors to actually analyse within this spreadsheet. Right? So remember, the headings are the factors that you need to analyse within your business report as well. Right? Okay. And I'll leave the last question to yourself. What possible business decisions could be made using this analysis? And I've already mentioned one: probably drop the hang on, what was it? The motor vehicle loans, because they're really not a great performer. If I change this thing back to, let's take these guys out and put lender back in. Right. And sort, obviously, always sort. So if I actually picked all loan type, say motor vehicle type, we can see that it's really hardly worth our trouble for home loans. We're selling 4 of them. Those four loans, if we actually thought about it, we could have the consultants, instead of pushing the four car loans, to push something else, different type, or work on different types of loans and so forth. So business decisions up team, but it's up to you to actually pick which part of the data to actually look into and so forth. I hope that helped. That's the end of the workshop. And remember, if you have any questions, email, right?